Keep in mind, my friends, Republicans control all three branches of government, including both chambers of Congress, but somehow, none of this is their fault.
The Democrats should know that they put the White House and the president in this position. And if they don't want further harm on their constituents back home, then they need to reopen the government. It's very simple.
There's a moment in political storytelling when the tone shifts, when something that looks like routine commentary suddenly becomes something far more revealing. That's exactly what happened the night Stephen Colbert took what should have been a standard late-night monologue and turned it into a slow, methodical breakdown of power, messaging, and contradiction. He started with a simple reminder, one that sounded almost too obvious to matter. Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House. Every lever of federal power sits in their hands, and yet somehow the narrative being pushed was that the consequences unfolding weren't theirs to own. That contradiction alone could have been a quick punchline. But Colbert didn't rush it. Instead, he paused. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let a statement sit long enough for people to actually hear it. Then came the response from the administration. A familiar line, delivered with certainty. Democrats were responsible. They had created the situation. And if they wanted relief for their constituents, the solution was simple: comply and reopen the government. On the surface, it sounded structured, clean, controlled. But Colbert understood something most people miss. Arguments don't fall apart when they're challenged loudly. They fall apart when they're replayed carefully. So that's what he did. He shifted the pace, rolled the footage, and brought in Karoline Leavitt, stepping to the podium once again, offering clarification, smoothing edges, reframing intent. She spoke with precision, confidence, and speed, emphasizing that comments had been misinterpreted, that critics were overreacting, that context had been lost somewhere between statement and headline. On paper, it worked. But Colbert didn't treat it like a finished explanation. He treated it like evidence. He placed her defense directly beside the original remarks from Donald Trump, not interrupting, not over-explaining, just letting both versions exist in the same space. And that's when the shift happened. At first, the audience laughed. That's what they came for. Laughter is easy when something feels absurd, but as the clips continued, the laughter changed. It slowed, became sharper, more deliberate, because this wasn't just about one statement anymore. It was about a pattern. Every time something controversial surfaced, the explanation followed the same path. It was a joke. It was taken out of context. It wasn't meant the way it sounded. And suddenly, what seemed like isolated moments began to connect into something larger. Colbert didn't need to say it outright. He built toward it, and then he landed the line that cut through everything. If every serious statement becomes a joke only after backlash begins, then maybe the joke isn't the statement. It's the cleanup. The room erupted, but beneath that reaction was something deeper than humor. It was recognition, because people weren't just laughing at the line, they were recognizing the structure behind it. Colbert pushed further. He brought in another layer: the policy clash, the messaging divide, the way language itself was being reshaped depending on who was speaking and when. Healthcare became one example. One side framed it as restoring coverage, the other reframed it as taxpayer burden. Same issue, completely different realities. And right in the middle of that tension stood Leavitt. At just 27, she had stepped into one of the most visible roles in American politics. Colbert didn't attack her directly. Instead, he reframed her position, not as the source of the message, but as the person tasked with making it hold together. That distinction mattered, because it shifted the focus from individuals to systems, from moments to cycles. Then came the turning point of the segment. Colbert stopped treating each clip as separate. He lined them up, one after another. Statement, defense, reframing, repeat, no dramatic music, no exaggerated reactions, just repetition. And repetition has a way of revealing things that single moments can hide. By the time the sequence ended, the pattern wasn't subtle anymore. It was visible, clear, difficult to ignore. Even Colbert seemed to recognize the weight of what he had built. At one point, he broke the tension briefly, asking the audience where they were watching from. A small moment that pulled viewers in, making them feel less like spectators and more like participants. Because that's what made the segment land. It didn't feel like commentary being delivered to an audience. It felt like something unfolding in real time, something people were actively processing together. And once that kind of recognition takes hold, it doesn't stay contained. Clips began spreading almost immediately. Not just the jokes, but the structure behind them, the side-by-side comparisons, the rhythm of the contradictions. People weren't just sharing something funny, they were sharing something that made sense. And that's where the real impact hit. Because for Donald Trump, this wasn't a typical media cycle anymore. This wasn't about headlines that could be challenged or reporters that could be dismissed. Satire operates differently. It doesn't argue. It reframes. And once a narrative is reframed in a way that sticks, every response to it risks reinforcing the very thing it's trying to push back against. That's the part that makes moments like this dangerous. Not because of what's said in the moment, but because of what people remember afterward. Colbert didn't just deliver a monologue that night. He created a lens, and once people start seeing through that lens, it becomes a lot harder to look at the same story the same way again.